Welcome to Day 5 of our Python beginner series. In this lesson, we will learn about conditional statements, which allow a program to make decisions. Just like in real life, sometimes a program needs to check a condition before taking an action. These statements help the program choose different actions depending on whether a condition is true or false. By the end of this lesson, you will understand how to write conditions and make your Python programs smarter. In real life, we make decisions every day. If it rains, we take an umbrella. If we are hungry, we eat food. Similarly, programs also need decision-making ability. That's where conditional statements help. An if statement checks a condition. If the condition is true, the code runs. If it is false, the code skips. Here is the basic syntax. If condition, statement. Notice the colon and indentation. Indentation is very important in Python. Let's say age is 18. If age is greater than or equal to 18, print, you can vote. Since the condition is true, it should print the message. But here, colon is missing, it will show syntax error. How it execute? Let's see. First, Python checks the condition. If true, block executes. If false, block is skipped. What if we want something different if condition is false? Here is the syntax. If condition is true, statement 1 will execute. If condition is false, else part will execute. Let's see example. Is number even or odd? If number modulo 2 equals 0, it is even. Otherwise it is odd. This is a perfect example of decision making. In this example, 5 modulo 2 is equals to 1. It is 1, so answer will be odd. Let's understand the basic syntax of conditional statements in Python. First, we write an if statement to check a condition. If the condition is true, the code inside the if block runs. If the first condition is false, we can check another condition using elif, which means else if. Finally, the else statement runs when none of the previous conditions are true. This structure allows Python programs to make decisions based on different situations. Now let's understand conditional statements with a grading system example. First, we store the marks in a variable. Here, the value of marks is 75. Next, the program checks conditions one by one. If the marks are greater than or equal to 90, the program prints grade A+. If that condition is not true, Python moves to the next condition using elif. If the marks are greater than or equal to 75, the program prints grade A. If this condition is also false, it checks the next one. If the marks are greater than or equal to 60, it prints grade B. Finally, if none of the conditions are true, the else block runs and the program prints grade C. This is how if, elif, and else help Python programs make decisions. Python checks conditions from top to bottom. First, it checks the if condition. If it is true, that block runs and Python stops checking further conditions. If it is false, Python moves to the elif condition. This process continues until the first true condition is found. If none of the conditions are true, the else block executes. Now let's understand a nested if statement. Here, we check two conditions, age and citizenship. First, Python checks if the age is greater than or equal to 18. If this condition is true, Python then checks another condition inside it. This inner condition checks whether the person is a citizen. If both conditions are true, the program prints eligible to vote. If the person is 18 or older but not a citizen, it prints not a citizen. And if the age is less than 18, the program prints too young to vote. This is called a nested if, where one if statement is placed inside another. A nested if means placing one if statement inside another if statement. It is used when a program needs to check multiple levels of conditions. First, the outer if condition is checked. If it is true, then the program checks the inner if condition. This helps the program make more detailed decisions. Now let's make this example interactive using user input. First, the program asks the user to enter their age. Then it asks if they are a citizen, expecting yes or no. Next, Python checks the first condition. If the age is 18 or more, the program checks the second condition. If the user is a citizen, it prints eligible to vote. If the user is not a citizen, it prints not a citizen. And if the age is less than 18, the program prints too young to vote. This is a practical example of a nested if statement with user input. One very common beginner mistake is forgetting the colon in an if statement. For example, if age greater than equals 18, print, you can vote. Here, the colon after the condition is missing. In Python, Every if statement must end with a colon. Because of this mistake, Python will show a syntax error. The correct code should be, if age greater than equals 18. Always remember to add a colon after the condition. Let's see another example using if, elif, and else. First, the program asks the user to enter the temperature. If the temperature is equal to 30, the program prints hot. If that condition is false, Python checks the elif condition. If the temperature is equal to 20, it prints warm. If none of these conditions are true, the else block runs and the program prints too low or too high. Remember, Python checks conditions from top to bottom, and the flow continues until the first true condition is found. Let's look at some common mistakes beginners make in Python. Students often forget the colon after an if statement. Sometimes they also forget proper indentation, which can cause an indentation error. Another common mistake is using single equals instead of double equals. Remember, single equals is used for assignment, while double equals is used for comparison. So always check these carefully while writing your code. Let's try another practice question. In this program, we first import the random module and generate a random number between 1 and 10. Next, the user is asked to guess the number. Then we use if, elif, and else conditions to check the guess. If the guess is equal to the target number, the program prints you guessed it right. If the guess is smaller than the target number, it prints too low, try a bigger number. Otherwise, it prints too high, try a smaller number. Pause the video and try running this program yourself to see how the conditions work. Now it's time for a mini challenge. Modify the number guessing program so that the user gets 3 chances to guess the number. Each time the user enters a guess, the program should check whether the guess is correct, too low, or too high. If the user guesses the number within the 3 attempts, print you guessed it right. But if the user fails after all 3 attempts, the program should print game over. Pause the video and try solving this challenge yourself. Here is your homework challenge. Write a Python program that takes 2 numbers as input from the user. Then use an if-else condition to compare the numbers and print the largest number. Try writing the program yourself before looking at any solution.